Before I begin the COVID update, can I just once again thank our police officers, all our emergency services workers, or all of our analysts here in Perth for all their efforts to find little Cleo over the last 3 weeks. It's been a magnificent effort, and the outcome, as we saw, was a wonderful result. So I think every West Australian has a spring in their step with happiness that whole series of events resulted in the finding of little Cleo alive and well. So terrific outcome, and I'd once again like to thank everyone who was involved. Overnight, West Australian Health has reported no new COVID-19 cases in WA. Currently, our vaccination rate for those aged 12 and older is 79.3% first dose and 63.7% for people having had 2 doses. Today is a significant day for Western Australia. It's the day we announce our safe transition plan to ease our control border and provide a soft landing out of the pandemic. We all know COVID is as unpredictable as it is tragic. We are all aware of the death and misery it has caused around Australia and throughout the world. That is why our approach towards a safe transition plan hasn't been rushed. It's been careful, methodical, and thorough. The most important thing is it is a cautious and safe plan based on our expert health advice. The aim is to provide certainty for Western Australians, to provide certainty on how business and our unique way of life can continue safely once we further ease our control borders and minimise any impact the inevitable arrival of the virus may have on our state in the short, medium and long terms. Our transition is a world first. What's unique about our plan is that it's intended for border controls to ease at a point where there is no community transmission in Western Australia, combined with very, very high levels of vaccination. This puts us in the best possible position to transition with minimal impact on our health, our economy and our way of life. We have done so well, we do not want to fall at the last hurdle. The plan will take effect when Western Australia reaches a 90% double dose vaccination rate for people aged 12 and above. That is forecast to take place in late January or early February. But as we have announced previously, we will announce the specific transition day after we've achieved a double dose vaccination rate of 80%. That's expected to be reached in December. As far as the world standards go, a rate of 90% will be an amazing achievement. But I've always believed we can strive high and get the best result for our state. And given our current vaccination rates, these targets are realistic and within our sights. Our current vaccination rates are in line with the supply of the vaccine, and a credit to each and every West Australian who has rolled up and done the right thing, even without the threat of COVID-19 in the local community, as some other jurisdictions have had. I want to stress the 90% target threshold could be reached earlier or later, but once we hit 80% and then set the specific date for transition, that date will be locked in to provide everyone with the certainty they need to plan ahead and be prepared for the next stage of this pandemic. Now, it is a statewide vaccination rate. However, if there are regional areas that don't have a high enough vaccination rate, then pending health advice at that time, intra-state borders to protect those specific regions may need to be introduced. This measure would be in place until the vaccination rate in those regions is lifted to satisfactory levels. Cutting off the Pilbara, or any region for that matter, is not something I want to do. But if that's what is required to protect the local community and local industries, then we will take that step based on the health advice at the time. So I'd again encourage all eligible West Australians all over WA to get vaccinated. The sooner you get vaccinated, the sooner the safe transition plan can kick in. It's in your hands. So roll up for WA now before it's too late. Today's announcement has come after extensive modelling was undertaken to give us an indication of what kind of impact the virus could have here in WA and help inform our final decisions. That modelling, which assumes a realistic or medium level of testing, tracing, isolation and quarantine, known as TTIQ, suggests there are undeniable benefits in waiting until our double dose vaccination rate hits 90%. Put simply, if we eased our borders earlier at 80%, modelling suggests widespread community transmission would result in far more infections, hospitalisations and deaths. Instead, waiting for our vaccination rate to hit 90% double dose would mean that when the state reaches widespread community transmission, the number of general ward beds that would be occupied are reduced by 70%. ICU beds that would be occupied are reduced by 75%. And the cumulative number of deaths is reduced by 63%. The difference in easing border controls at 90% rather than 80% is 200 West Australian lives are saved. I repeat, the difference in easing border controls at 90% rather than 80% is 200 West Australian lives are saved. A comprehensive summary of the modelling will be released and available online shortly. But even at the most basic level, the differences are stark. They cannot be ignored, nor can the benefits. The modelling is not an exact prediction of the future, but the numbers cannot be overlooked. It reinforces our careful and cautious approach and our strategy to avoid unnecessary risks. We want to give Western Australia, the best chance of safely dealing with the return of the virus and its potential spread through the community. Saving lives, protecting our communities, our businesses and WA jobs is, and always will be, this government's focus. We won't be swayed and we won't be pressured into a different approach. We will follow the path we have set out based on our health advice to keep Western Australia safe and strong. Our island within an island has delivered health and economic results that have been the envy in the world and the best in the world. And with a safe transition, we have the potential to keep it that way. In order to ease our controlled border when we hit our 90% double dose vaccination target, specific safeguards will be required to minimise the impact of the virus. With a 90% rate and zero COVID in the community at the point of transition, Western Australia is in the enviable position to have minimal restrictions in place. This is the added benefit of a 90% rate and no community transmission of the virus. Based on our current health advice, the following baseline public health and social measures will be implemented at the point of transition in late January or early February. Face masks will be required, but only at high-risk indoor settings. These include on public transport, in hospitals and aged care facilities. Proof of vaccination will be required to attend nightclubs, the casino and large events with crowds of more than 1,000 people, like the footy or a concert. Contact registers and use of Safe WA will still be required at all public venues, as will revised COVID event and safety plans, and entry will be restricted to remote Aboriginal communities where necessary. These safeguards will complement our vaccination rollout. They will be interim, they won't last forever, but they will put us in the best position in case of an outbreak. Our baseline public health and social measures are critical levers that will be able to be strengthened if the threat changes. The step-up measures, which would only be implemented on health advice, could include things like greater use of face masks, capacity and density limits on businesses and venues, additional proof of vaccination requirements, and rapid testing at workplaces. These step-up measures are something I want to avoid, and achieving a rate of 90% gives us the best chance of doing just that. These safeguards, together with a 90% vaccination rate, will enable us to ease our border controls, both the interstate and international border. At the point of transition, travel will be permitted, from all jurisdictions across Australia. Arrivals from interstate will be required to be double dose vaccinated, return a negative PCR test 72 hours prior to departure, and undertake a test within 48 hours of entering WA. All arrivals from overseas will be required to return a negative PCR test 72 hours prior to departure and undertake a test within 48 hours of arrival. International arrivals won't be subject to quarantine if they're double dose vaccinated, but international arrivals who are not double dose vaccinated will be required to complete 14 days quarantine in a designated facility. All arrivals will be required to complete a G2G pass with the relevant evidence included. The border controls and G2G pass requirements will be reviewed regularly and phased out when appropriate, based on the health advice at the time. I understand there will be disappointment for some. I acknowledge some people will be frustrated. They may not be able to be reunited with family from New South Wales or Victoria over Christmas. I know what that feels like. I understand. I won't be able to see my parents and my brother until the transition in late January or early February. But as difficult as it is for the right reasons. It's about following the health advice and keeping Western Australia safe. We need to achieve the 90% vaccination rate to safely make the transition. This will ensure we can save hundreds of WA lives. It will ensure we can make longer term plans with certainty. Western Australia has done such a great job, we don't want to fall over at the final hurdle. The next step is coming. After nearly 2 years, we're on the verge of a new chapter. A chapter that will reconnect Western Australia with the rest of the world, but done the right way. The West Australian way, safely, carefully and responsibly. To rush it increases risk and increases harm. That's why our Safe Transition Plan has been carefully calibrated based on extensive modelling and the most up-to-date health advice. It is about safety, it is about certainty, it is about providing a soft landing out of the pandemic that reduces the risk and consequently the threat to our enviable way of life here in WA. Something we've done so well to achieve by coming together for a common goal. The goal is now within reach. We just all need to get vaccinated.